Welcome to the Middle School Bookmarker Show. My name's Brianna.
And I'm Chris. We are teachers reading this middle school novel for the very first time. We hope you will read it along with us and listen to our conversation about it.
This week we're covering Schooled by Gordon Korman, and we just read chapters 23 and 24. So if you haven't read them yet, go do that now.
Oh, and by the way, we're going to get this whole show wrapped up in just 11 minutes because 11 minutes is all you need to
hang rubber paper off of my man, yo.
That was beautiful. That was absolutely beautiful. So we pick up with assistant principal Mr. Kasigi. He just had a really successful conference and he's proud of himself. A lot of people came up and congratulated him. He found out from somebody in his district that he's on the top of the list for a principal job that's coming down the pipe at the high school. He has a great line in the beginning of this chapter where he says that his return was flushed with victory, but he had no idea that what was about to happen is he should have focused on the word flush. I love that part.
Yeah, he was a funny character because we've run into him before, but this is the first chapter we had from him, and he was kind of just talking himself up for the first couple pages, and then it just all like crashed and burned, and it was definitely an entertaining chapter, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm. It starts off high, but it turns very quickly on Mr. Kasigi. He comes back to a mess. What does he come back to on his desk?
So there's all of these letters on his desk, and most of them are from the bank. And so if you all remember, Cap was just spending the money of the school left and right with these checks, donating to different charities. And so Mr. Kasigi had no idea this was going on. He's opening all of these bank statements up and seeing just how much money Cap spent, and that everything in the account, all $4,000 of it, is just gone.
Yeah, they got bounce checks from the March of Dimes, from a couple cancer societies, another thing called the March of Caring. So Kasigi's going through these. He identifies that these are the checks that he signed and gave to Cap. $4,000 is gone. And you know what else is gone? Capricorn. Capricorn has gone back to the farm. So we'll just call him, right? No, there's no phone either. So he's stuck in this terrible position, Kasigi is, where he's just lost all this money. He really messed up by giving Cap the checks, as we'll see in a second. And he has no real easy way to get in contact with him. But he can call Mrs. Donnelly.
Yeah, so Kasigi's freaking out. He's like calling Mrs. Donnelly a million times to get her on the phone, and she realizes how urgent it is and just shows up at the school. And they have a really interesting kind of conversation because Mrs. Donnelly comes from the experience of being on and a part of the Garland commune until she was 12. So she can completely understand why Cap did what he did, even if she thinks it's incorrect. She basically tells Mr. Kasigi, well, this is your fault. Like, he had no idea how money works, and you left town with a bunch of signed checks to give to him.
Donnelly tries to explain it to Kasigi, because Kasigi has no idea what Cap and Donnelly's childhood experience was like. She talks about how on the farm, all the time, they hide all the financial stuff that has to get done, and they actively, explicitly talk about how money causes all these problems, and a lot of the things that are wrong with the world come from money. So she uses that to back up her point that this is your fault, Kasigi. You shouldn't have signed and given that kid a bunch of blank checks.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to see how he kind of had to process that information because he was just trying to blame Cap for fraud. And I'm like, number one, he's like an 11 or 12-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, like, you knew from the first time you met him that he was, like, ignorant of a lot of things, like a very innocent seeming kid. I was honestly surprised that he was trying to get this kid arrested for fraud.
Mm-hmm. And then over this conversation, Kasigi does realize that it is his fault, and we probably shouldn't go and get Cap arrested, especially after what just happened to Cap. I want to stop really quick and talk about something that, I forget who said it, but there's a point where they're talking about idealism and how people, Capricorn and Rain, people from the farm, they're idealists. So if you hear that, that means that somebody believes in a very specific way that you should do things, and they've held themselves to high standards in accomplishing those things. And if you have ideals about a certain topic, well, then you believe that you should act a certain way about that topic regardless of the situation, even sometimes if the law doesn't say it's the right thing to do. So ideals are what people believe in that are more important than anything else. If you have a high ideal about something, it is more important than anything else. So people on the farm at Garland, they have very strong community ideals and very strong anti-money ideals. So when they're called an idealist, that's what they meant.
Right, and it reminds me of like the morality question. Like if you're doing what you believe is morally correct, that's similar to idealism and doing what follows your ideals.
So Kasigi's stuck. He's considering, should I ask for the charity money back, which is an awkward position to be in? Should he cancel the dance, which ultimately that's what he decides. But he goes through the records, and as Ms. Donnelly is there, they pull one non-charity, I guess it would be like some kind of receipt, and it's from a jewelry store. And at this point, they don't know that the bracelet that Sophie is wearing is where that receipt is from. So we know that's coming down the pipe. That's going to be a pretty interesting conflict.
Absolutely. And then the chapter ends with Mr. Kasigi kind of reflecting back on the whole prank about how they choose the 8th grade president, and he says he's kind of suspected it for a long time, but he was always kind of looking away and thinking that it was going to sort itself out, when really he comes to the realization that he was just stamping his own kind of approval on it because he wasn't doing anything. And so now it has almost ruined his career, potentially has ruined his career.
So I bet he's probably not going to sign blank checks anymore and give them to kids, especially ones that seem like they're from a commune. He probably also is going to take a more active role in this kind of like strange kind of bullying that's happening. I bet that this experience is probably going to change Kasigi for the better. Which brings us to chapter 24, Naomi.
So we have Naomi again, and she is just kind of freaking out about where Cap is because she hasn't seen him in over a week. There are a whole bunch of rumors going on. She's freaking out because all she knows is that he was run over on the football field, and then Daryl punched him a few hours later, and he left in an ambulance. And nobody has seen him since, and the whole school is kind of freaking out over it.
And the whole school is freaking out. There's kids meeting in the hallway, and they know as soon as there's any group of kids congregating, they know like, oh, they must be talking about Cap. But Naomi, more than anybody in the school, is the most upset because she is crushing really hard on Capricorn. She even says, like, this is more than a crush. I want a relationship with him. So she actually wants to start dating Cap, but he's nowhere to be found. So she goes up to one of her teachers. I think her name was Ms. Vogel. And she says, do you know anything about Cap? It's been a week plus. And the teacher responds, well, actually, Cap isn't enrolled in this school anymore. Oh, and by the way, the dance is canceled for next week. So probably not the info that Naomi was looking for when she went to go talk to Ms. Vogel.
Yeah, so Naomi just gets even more worried, and she kind of starts putting these pieces of information that she's gathering from all different sources together. So she's like, okay, Cap's missing, they're canceling the dance, and Kasigi gets emotional whenever he hears Cap's name. Like, that can't be good. Like, no. So she starts thinking really extreme things. What does she start thinking about?
Well, let's wait for the biggest thing comes at the end of the chapter. But they come up with all these ideas about how they can find out information. Lena, who I think is my second favorite character behind Hugh Winkleman, even though she hasn't been a narrator yet, she's like the cheerleader queen of the school. She pulls some favors, gets Cap's file. It's empty, which only makes everybody more concerned. Why would his file be blank? Where's his previous school records, transcripts, all that other stuff? Nobody knows where he lives. They dig and dig and dig, and they finally get one lead as they're trying to figure out what's going on, and it's the Donnellys.
Right, so I think some girl who was related to, I think it was like Josh Weintraub or whatever, the guy that Sophie went on a date with, saw Cap there, so they found out it was the Donnellys. They go check it out, and basically Sophie and Mrs. Donnelly say, oh, where he is, there isn't any phone.
So at this, the kids don't know about the commune, and they're suspecting the worst, and they just keep suspecting worse and worse things as they get more information. All this is coming together and fitting together like something really bad happened to Cap as a result of the football injury or getting punched by Daryl. The ambulance, oh my goodness, there's no record. All this stuff is coming together, and they come to one very scary conclusion, thankfully a very incorrect conclusion, that Cap must be dead of all things. I also want to stop and circle back one more time to another thing that doesn't really happen in a middle school, but it's kind of like a trope that happens in a lot of novels and movies and stuff. So these kids just jump on another student's bus and just rode it to the Donnelly's house. That is unsafe and would not happen in a real school. I think we covered all of our points, Brianna, and this is one of the rare episodes where we're under 11 minutes. Oh, so the secret word for this week is busy. Brianna, you want to bring us home?
Yep, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button, ring the notification bell, and subscribe for more. Next time, we're going to be reading chapters 25 and 26.
We're getting close to the end. I feel a big climax coming. We'll see you later.